This is Boulder Blitz 2.0. With some new information and a little bit of refining, we were able to push Boulder Blitz to the next level. Now it's faster, smoother, and still does fantastic damage. This build flies through any content in the game. Just look at me clearing the final room of a tier 100 vault and killing some of the hardest bosses in the game. This is a build you're not going to want to miss. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I also stream at twitch.tv/screamhard if you want to come by. I also wanted to shout out Ace for pointing out that the metamorphic stone aspect isn't working as intended, which is the main reason we're moving to one-handed in this build. Now let's get into the build. So if you're not familiar with how Boulder Blitz works, we've got our main source of damage, which is our boulder. And in order to get the boulder to spin around us because of our dolmen stone necklace, we're going to want to use Hurricane. As long as Hurricane's up, every boulder we cast will spin around us instead of going in a straight line. Our goal is to maintain Hurricane 100% of the time. And because of our Nature's Fury and Symbiotic, every time we cast Boulder, there's a 30% chance that we can get 5 seconds off the cooldown of our Hurricane. So you should be able to maintain it reasonably well. Hurricane's also going to reduce our damage by 20%, and then we've got Earth and Bulwark. This is going to be a source of Unstoppable. Between the Unstoppable from this and the Unstoppable from Trample, that should give us 100% uptime on our Tybalt's Will damage. It's also going to give us a lot of Spirit, so make sure you use them regularly. Next up, we've got our Petrify. We're mostly going to save our Petrify for elite packs, and especially suppressor mobs. If you use this on suppressor mobs, you'll remove their suppressor completely. And this build also struggles with wall mobs. If you ever run into a situation with suppressor or wall mobs, just stun them right away. That'll give you enough time to build your boulders back up and kill them. Finally, what makes this build really pop is our Shred. Shred is going to be used entirely for its mobility. It does have some extra bonuses like applying poison, but this is a great tool to keep the enemies within range as they're getting knocked back. For a gear, I'm recommending Harlequin Crest or Godslayer. For a chest armor, we're going with a defensive piece that has Symbiotic on it. For gloves, we're going with Natural Balance. For pants, we're going with Tybalt's Will. For boots, we're going with Ghostwalker. For a weapon, we're doing a one-handed axe, and we're going to be using Metamorphic Stone. For our amulet, we're going with Dolmen Stone. On ring 1, we're going with Starless Skies. And if you don't have Starless Skies, you can either use Umbral or something like Aspect of Elements to give you a little more damage. For our other ring, we're going to be using Retaliation. And then for our totem, we're going to be using Accelerating. Since I'm recommending that we're not using Juggernaut or Disobedience as the default, on our chest piece, we're probably going to want Total Armor. And then a combination of max life and damage reduction. In this build, damage reduction while fortified and damage reduction versus distant enemies I think are the best. For our gloves, we're going with attack speed, critical strike damage, all stats, and willpower. For our boots, we're going with movement speed, spirit cost reduction, all stats, and willpower. On our one-handed weapon, we want all stats, willpower, damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Hopefully you get a better roll than I did. And then any effective damage stat. So that could be core damage, critical strike damage with earth skills, and then there's multiple less effective ones. For a ring, we're going with critical strike chance, maximum life, damage to crowd controlled enemies, and any damage stat. I prefer critical strike damage on this one. Now there's a lot of good stats on the offhand, so just make sure you get some good ones. But I prefer critical strike chance, cooldown reduction, and then it's a toss-up, but spirit cost reduction, damage reduction, and anything else you think is good is probably fine here. For a Seneshal Construct, we're going with Flash of Adrenaline with the typical setup. It's going to have Duration, Tactical, and Genesis. If you don't have Genesis, you can use Fortify. For our other skill, we're going with Tempest, Evernight, Resource, and Breaking. If you need more resources, you can swap either Evernight or Breaking for Swift, and if you don't have Evernight, you can either go with Safeguard or Efficiency. For our Spirit Boons, we're going with Wariness, Avian Wrath, Iron Feather, Energize, and Calm Before the Storm. Calm Before the Storm is not going to proc super often, so if you'd rather have a little extra healing, you can do Masochistic, and if you like a little extra damage, you can go with Obsidian Slam. But keep in mind, Obsidian Slam is not going to help with bosses, and we usually try and focus on boss damage. Now in our skill tree, there's one thing I want to note before I continue. You do have an option to swap out your Trample and go with the Wind Shear. Wind Shear can end up being nice because it helps you keep your Natural Balance procced, gives you a little bit of move speed, helps keep your spirit up, will trigger the Resonance passive more often, and overall it's just a solid choice. But for the overall flow of the build, I do feel like Trample ends up being a little bit better. Now since I'm not recommending Wind Shear, we're just going to put the 2 points in, but this is not going on the skill bar. Then we're going to move down, we're going to put 1 point in Shred and go to Primal Shred. We're going to max out Predatory Instinct and Digitrograde Gate. We're going to put 1 point in Earth and Bulwark, and we're going to go to Innate Earth and Bulwark. I put this one here just for the off chance of a little extra damage on bosses or whatever it might be. But this is not necessary, so feel free to put this where you want. We did 2 points in Ancestral Fortitude, and you can remove or add these depending on how much resistance you need. Moving down from here, we're going to skip the Companion Tree, and in the Wrath Tree, we're going to max out Endless Tempest. We're going to get 1 point in Hurricane, going to Savage Hurricane. We're going to max out our Boulder, and we're going to go to Natural Boulder. We're also going to be maxing out Stone Guard and putting 2 points in Safeguard. We'll also be putting 1 point in Trample and going to Savage Trample. Then we're going to max out Envenom and put 1 point in Toxic Claws. Keep in mind if you're trying to apply poison to bosses so you can get the Envenom bonus, you're going to have to use your Shred on them just a little bit in order to maintain that poison. For our ultimate, we're going with Petrify, and we're putting 1 extra point in Prime Petrify. We're going to max out Defiance, Natural Disaster, Resonance, and put 2 points in Circle of Life. If you're struggling with survivability, you could go 1 point in Quick Shift and max out Heightened Senses, but you'll have to pull the points from somewhere else, which means you'll probably lose a little bit of damage. For our Keystone passive, we're going with Nature's Fury. And there's one thing I wanted to point out here. So I actually was testing for a little bit, and you can run Ursine Strength and you won't lose your boulders on your Hurricane sometimes. I don't know exactly how it works. I wasn't able to figure out the source of why it happens. But sometimes you can go through an entire dungeon and your boulders will continue to spin around you even if you lose your Hurricane. But other times, if you lose your Hurricane, the boulders will just go flying. So if the boulders are sticking to you even if your Hurricane runs out, then you can swap to Ursine Strength and get a little extra damage and HP. For the Paragon boards, we're gonna have Exploit on our starter board. Then we're gonna move up from here. We're gonna be getting Spirit on the Constricting Tendrils board. From here, we're moving to the right and we're attaching the Ancestral Guidance board, and we're gonna be putting Outmatch here. Moving from the right from here, we're gonna put Inner Beast, and on Inner Beast, we're gonna grab Undaunted. Finally, to the right from here, we're gonna attach our Earth and Devastation board, and here we're gonna be putting our Earth and Sky Glyph. Don't be afraid to adjust your points here depending on what you need. So for example, if you need more resistances, if you put a point in right here, you'll notice that this is actually gonna be about 4% resists. And I put an extra little bit of intelligence here so I can hit my bonuses. If you don't need this, you can take this out. And if you need more, you could put one here and you're gonna get a bunch more intelligence. Same goes for the decks here, but it's unlikely you'll actually need the decks. And if you need to pull those points from somewhere, I highly recommend coming over here and taking some out of the critical strike damage. Or if you happen to overcap on your damage to crowd controlled enemies, you can pull some out over here, but make sure you check your Earth and Devastation because you should be getting 40% here. When everything's said and done, you should have over 30,000 HP, should be seeing about 15,000 attack power, somewhere around 8k armor, about 45% critical strike chance, and I'll go ahead and slide through my stats so you can see everything else in case you want to compare. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video. If you like my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Where's Last Epoch when I need it?